we're back at the Dr. Jimbo Love Show, and I'm here with Seth Matthew, General Manager of Brothers Bar. Seth has a little thing he wants to tell us a little bit about that's going to make his prediction much better about Minnesota, Ohio State. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, during the break, did a little bit of research. It actually turns out that Ohio State is coming to Minnesota.
Interesting.
With a freshman quarterback.
Exactly. Now, a whole host of things can happen. One, what's Minneapolis? Now, granted, in September or late August, Minneapolis is pretty predictable. But what happens if it rains?
If it rains, if it snows, you never know. It can always start early.
It could snow in Minneapolis in August, right?
Yeah, and we've had snow in May. So, I mean, you always got to be aware of the conditions, and that stadium is loud.
Yeah. Oh, no, it is.
And like I said before, this is a freshman quarterback whose last game was in a high school.
Yeah.
He's about to go to a whole new magnitude of crowd noise.
And again, remember, Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, he had a couple cupcakes to get himself all warmed up with. Okay? This is a league game. Okay? This is an important ball game for Ohio State. And again, we're talking about an 18-year-old kid. Will he be able to sustain, and will the talent around him be able to bring him through? We'll see.
Well, yeah, and I would say we have a better shot than 25 now. I bet you we have a 30% chance of winning.
Okay.
So we're moving up.
So according to Seth, we're going to just round it up. 33% would be 1/3. Would you say about a 1/3, 1 out of 3 chance?
Yeah.
Hey, in boxing, that's called a puncher's chance, right? Puncher's chance.
What's more significant about this is Minnesota, you're not going to contend for a national title. You don't have as much to lose as Ohio State. With the way football works, if you lose one game in college football, there's a good chance you don't make that college national championship tournament.
Exactly. And this could be Minnesota's basically bowl game or pre-bowl game.
Yeah.
You know, because if they win this game, matter of fact, all they've got to do is win 5 more games and somebody's going to invite them to a bowl because they beat Ohio State in the first game of the season.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, one thing I want to shift into, and some of your audience, my audience understands this, is we do a little science. We do a little bit of, just to mix it in. And today what we're going to talk about is the radio. And basically, I'm just going to tell you some pretty wild facts that I didn't realize. Radio's golden age was between 1910 and 1940, right, Seth?
Yeah.
So back then, if Seth was a young boy in Minnesota, he would have had the equal opportunity as a kid like me who's grown up in upstate New York to be able to listen to the AM stations. Now, what is the difference between AM and FM? Well, from what I understand and what has been explained to me is basically it's just a wavelength differential. So AM, you're going to have a lot longer sine wave, okay? So the wave is spread out. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that you can shoot that wave further, okay? So instead of just reaching like KDKA, a famous AM station out of Pittsburgh, still to this day, boost their signal so that they were reaching almost 3/4, and by the time they were done, I think it was 83% of the nation. Okay, unheard of.
Yeah, that's crazy.
People were tuning in just to hear the weather forecast in Pittsburgh because this is before TV. Okay, folks, remember TV was not practical. Okay, it showed up in the 1939 World's Fair. Okay, and it was like the Jetsons were to us, or at least to me. And radio was really all that there was. And if you see these fireside chats that our president had in the 30s, Roosevelt, he also used it to comfort a lot of people during World War II. Kind of like the way our president now is trying to get on the airwaves and comfort us with all the things that are going on in Afghanistan. All right, so again, in 1820, a gentleman, his name is Hans Christian Oersted, out of Germany. Imagine that. Germany has had some of the best scientists on the planet ever. He came up with the concept, and he noticed that when you pass an electric current through a cable, an electromagnetic feature is produced. Okay? Let's not get all technical. What's electromagnetic radiation? For all practical purposes, everything that we see visually is electromagnetic radiation. Everything we hear is electromagnetic radiation. The electromagnetic scale starts over here, the infrared goes to X-rays. In between is every single type of different wavelength, and that's all it is. So that's what radio is. It's a segment of the electromagnetic spectrum. FM, of course, is going to be shorter wavelengths. It doesn't go as far, but it's clear. So for music, FM is the way to go.
Yep.
And we know that, and there's certain FM stations that will last, you know, as you're driving across the country, you'll notice, you know, it's about every hour and a half, you got to change your station. The other guy that got involved was Faraday. Faraday is what one of the measurements, and then Hertz. But the thing I want to bring to your attention is radio was not the vogue. It was not in vogue until 1910. It was invented in 1820. Now, what did they do between 1820 and radio? A little thing called the telegraph. ... .. Seth, tell me a little bit of what you remember from your Morse code days.
Not a whole lot. I pretty much remember SOS. It
SOS?
was 3 quick, 3 long, 3 quick.
Very good. Well, hey, we're not calling SOS yet. Okay, we're not. But anyways, so that gives you a little bit of background on radio. And what's interesting, and the reason we brought this up, is because it took 90 years really for radio to go and bridge the gap and get people walked away from telegraphs, okay? And everybody walked towards radio. The same way that we thought that everybody was going to walk away from radio when TV and movies became in vogue, but radio has endured, and radio will continue to endure. And if you know anything about a movie from the 1980s, it's 1984. You remember it called Red Dawn?
I do.
Okay. Patrick Swayze was in it. Emilio Estevez's brother there, Charlie Sheen, got his big break. There was a bunch of other actresses. That wasn't Sarah Jessica Parker, but it was the girl from Carolina in the City. What's her name there? She's so cute. She's a Minnesota girl. We're talking, oh my goodness gracious. I can't remember her name, but I can see her face. She was in all those movies with All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise. She was his girlfriend. Anyways, we'll come back to that. Remember that. But she was in that, and a host of other. C. Thomas Howell, the can't miss kid who was in Outsiders that ended up being a big miss. Anyways, what was it that was able for the people that were trapped behind enemy lines? They sent coded messages via AM radio. The chair is up against the wall. The dog scratches twice. Those were all code words. I'll tell you what, if there's ever an EMP strike, and we know what that is, right? Tell us a little bit of what you know about EMP.
It's a electric magnetic pulse.
Yep.
If that goes, all electronics are wiped clean.
Gone. You know, and one thing you can do is you can save your radio. If your radio's down in your basement, or if it's around something, you know, of course lead would protect it. But that's going to be how we have to communicate if the apocalypse happens.
There's a lot of books, science fiction of course,
Sure.
about how the world would be basically all in discombobulation if an EMP was ever sent, because it would ruin all of our lines of communication for traveling your food to your grocery store.
No car will start. No car.
Yeah, no cars, no anything.
The only kind of cars that we could have a chance of actually working would be the oldest vehicle you could ever imagine. Anything with a computer chip in it, done. Lights, done. Electricity, done. And it's scary because an EMP strike can happen where they send a missile up into basically near Earth space and just detonate a nuclear warhead. And that in itself would send an EMP strike that would wipe us out.
It makes you think too. You think about it. We're all switching to electric cars here, and that's the whole green initiative. So
well, and the thing is that we really should prepare for it because it's so easy. Why do a full nuclear exchange when you can take a country by just knocking out all their communications? Pure chaos. So, all right. On a brighter note, let's talk a little bit about what we were talking about earlier with the Csu Cu Rivalry. I'm going to let Seth talk a little bit about this.
yeah, so it's a great rivalry to have, and unfortunately, they don't have a contract to start again. I believe 2023 or 20.
Yes, sir.
So,
I just saw it today. I was surprised too.
and that's just a big thing for football. And I mean, they're not the two top schools in the nation, but it's a pride thing. You're in the same state. You want to say I'm the better college, and we're losing that rivalry.
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
Then they're bringing it back intermittently. And one thing that is positive, now I kind of like the fact, and Seth had alluded to this earlier, that they would play at Mile High Stadium, which is a neutral site. But with college football, and I've seen it and witnessed it with South Carolina and Clemson, if we played at a neutral site, say Charlotte, it wouldn't have the pageantry or the absolute, and you got to remember, these schools know you have got to have hospitality towards your fellow rival, in-state rival, because you're going to have to go down to their place the next year. So there's an accountability factor. And you find a civility between the schools before the game and after the game that you'd never think would ever exist.
Well, and it's always at the beginning of the year, so it's really awesome atmosphere. It gets everybody excited for college football. Now, CU didn't miss a beat. So they may not have that game, but they put number 11 Oregon on their opening day schedule. And I can't remember where they're playing, if it's home or away, but CU, I hope you pull the upset.
Yeah.
Wish you the best of luck.
One thing about CU is they're not afraid. Now, we talked about Alabama off camera here. Alabama, tell them a little bit about Alabama. Now, Alabama is always a traditional superpower, but how do they start their season every year?
They always make sure that they're set up for success. They already have a tough conference, so you don't want to beat yourself up right away. I believe they have one tough game because they want to put themselves to test before they get to conference. But that's a bunch of fluff games. They win 70-0. It's a typical Alabama. They just run the show. They have the best recruits, and it's usually so it's not even like a real Texas school. They'll play like Texas, some Division II school.
Sure. Well, the only advantage to that is that the school that plays Alabama gets paid a considerable amount of money.
Now, once it's like $1 million just to play and get beat up.
but it's huge, and it's huge exposure for these. If it's a Division I AA, and I still refer to them as that, or if it's a smaller school, like say Alabama goes and plays an Appalachian State or an ESU. That right there is what they're talking about as far as any kind of 3, 4, or maybe they can snag a 5-star recruit. Hey, you're going to be able to play against the best players that are out there. We actually have Alabama coming into our place. Now,
and I'm glad you brought up Appalachian State. With these little schools coming in, yes, they're usually supposed to lose, but does not always happen. College football is one of the best sports because anything can happen. Michigan was ranked in the top, I don't remember what they were ranked, but they were in the top 4 of the country.
It was 2007 if I remember correctly.
Appalachian State took Michigan to the house and beat them.
Yes, now App State is from this small little town called Boone, North Carolina. Anybody, if you guys are ever traveling from Florida up towards Virginia, stop in western North Carolina. Boone is a treat. But they are not a football mecca that should be bumping off. And I think they did it in the Big House. Did they do it in the Big House?
They did it in Michigan. It was the biggest upset I've ever seen.
It really was, and I remember it very well. And we're talking now 14 seasons ago, okay? Remember, we're in 2021. 2007, 14 years. How old were you back then?
2007, I was graduating high school.
Wow. Yeah, so Seth is looking at it as an 18-year-old. Now, granted, for me, 14 years ago puts me right at 40. I'm still an old man.
And you look at it too, there are others, like not such a small school. I believe they're in the Mountain West, but Boise State
Yes.
made it to a bowl game. People didn't think they deserved to be there, and unfortunately, it was my Oklahoma Sooners that ended up losing
Statue of Liberty
play, and it ended up upsetting them.
Yeah, it did. It was amazing. But the fact was that they went for the 2-point conversion and the win. In a bowl game, Boise State, that absolutely was fantastic. Fantastic college football. And what a bowl game. I'm sorry about your guys. That's all right. Like, did it hurt?
A little bit.
Yeah, you were young then.
Yeah, so I recovered pretty quick.
Excellent. Well, now, we've got, I can't speak highly enough. If you ever have a chance to go down to Air Force, please do. There is not a bad seat in that stadium. I was down there I go down because my father-in-law is retired Army. My brother-in-law is 20-year Navy guy. So anytime the Commander-in-Chief trophy or any kind of military institute game goes on, we go down to the games. Have you been to an Air Force game yet?
So I did not go to the Air Force game, but I've been in the stadium. I went to the outdoor game when the Colorado Avalanche played the LA Kings.
Oh, how cool was that?
It was awesome.
That must have been a spectacle.
And you got to go on the base. It was so cool to see.
Yeah. You know, they're still fixing that, the chapel down there. The chapel is really something. I don't think it's going to be open again until 2024, but that's definitely a destination you want to see. But go and see an Air Force game. Go see a Wyoming Fort Collins, the border war, right, is what they call it. Fort Collins, CSU versus
Yeah, it was the border battle.
Yeah, versus Wyoming. Again, have you been up to any of those games?
Haven't yet. I really want to go.
Yep.
I've only been to the University of Minnesota Golfers game.
Well, Seth is a general manager at the age of 32. They're working him pretty hard. And college football in a sports bar is wild.
Crazy.
It is like tax season for an accountant. Anyway, so do you know anything about Wyoming that you've seen stick out? What are your feelings about Wyoming? And let's just do a comparison and contrast them between CSU.
So Wyoming is, to me, so if I'm going to compare it to the Midwest, it's North Dakota State. It's what they remind me of. They're that team that's always there. And you had Josh Allen just come through there, and he really put them on the map.
Big time.
And so now that he's been removed for 3 years, it's really going to see where the next guy from Wyoming is going to come. You're seeing it in these smaller schools that are producing pro players. So,
well, why not? Think about it. If you're a quarterback and you're trying to be, say you're a 3-star, 4-star, and a 3-star quarterback, by the way, is a fantastic quarterback. You know, because there's only one quarterback per team. So you're right. Why not go to a Wyoming? Now, do you know anything about CSU's or Wyoming's quarterback situation?
So I'm not really familiar with their quarterbacks, but I know that Wyoming right now has a guy. He hasn't been tested too much this year, so he's going to be coming into a rocky situation. But Wyoming seems to be getting really good players out of that division. So they're going to be right up there. They do have to compete, though, with the Boise State. Boise State, ever since they've made their huge run, recruits just seem to go there a lot. Ever since they...
Well, have you been to Boise before? Boise's an absolute beautiful campus. The school is wonderful.
And they play on a blue field.
They do. And I got a story for you about the blue field. Okay, so back in 2009, I got a chance to play golf in a glow ball, which is a night tournament in golf, with a gentleman who was on the Boise State football team. He was a big offensive lineman. The first year they went to the Smurf turf, which is blue. It is Smurf blue.
It is weird to watch on TV.
So get this. As they painted the field, they didn't even get the lines on the field yet, okay, because they were still trying to get all that done. I guess it was a wet summer or something. And they had ducks and geese that were coming down and basically trying to land on the field and were getting seriously injured. So of course, they had a green tarp that they put across it, but they had to go out there. They painted it with the white, and the birds were still coming down. Okay, they were still. I know we're not talking like 1 or 2 birds. We're talking they were about 15 to 30 different deaths every day. It was a very big problem. So the next thing they did was they took red barrels like you see on the highway, and they put them out there every 5 yards, and they created a grid section, and it saved the birds. So that's your background. And then this gentleman, because that was all we talked about for the first 4 holes, because I couldn't believe it. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Because there's not a lot of water around that stadium. So when they're flying over, they're programmed in their mind to land and rest.
That's interesting.
Well, all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short little break. We're going to come back and wrap everything up. We're then going to go on and talk about next week, okay? Next week's a great show. We're going to continue to do this. We may be outside next week. We don't know. And again, we will be scheduling another remote broadcast based on Seth's schedule, and also coordinating with the new general manager up in Fort Collins, Brothers Bar, Fort Collins. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. It's the best starter bar. I used to think Vinny's was. Not anymore. Vinny's has been replaced. You need to see Brothers Barbecue. And
Brothers
then,
Bar and Grill.
my goodness gracious.
You must be hungry.
I'm thinking of barbecue. And Brothers Barbecue is not as good as Brothers Bar. Anyways, we'll be back, and I'm going to make sure that I don't say that wrong thing again. Seth, what else do you have? Any other last thoughts here from this segment? Anything you want to add?
I mean, we're still week 0 for sports, so everyone get ready for next week. We'll have some great content, and you know,
What's going on for Brothers Bar this week? Can you kind of walk us through your week here?
so Brothers Bar over here in Northfield, we're actually right by the Rapids Stadium. So if you ever see a Rapids game, come on over. We actually just had last Monday Guns N' Roses over at Dick's Sporting Goods.
Weezer's coming, and that group of concerts, Weezer and da-da-da-da, they're going to be here, I think, in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, so if you ever find yourself going to a concert, stop on by. If you have any favorite team, just let me know. We'll get them on the TVs for you, because we have access to every single game.
Exactly, and that is one thing that I can tell you. When I first started coming here, and I didn't even know Seth was the man, anytime I asked any of his bartenders or any of his staff to accommodate me for my teams, which are, you know, I like the Steelers, I like finding Syracuse. South Carolina is very hard to find. Seth always put it on the thing. Matter of fact, when South Carolina upset Georgia, I came running in here afterwards, and Seth poured me multiple beers and congratulated my team by not even charging me, which is really nice, and I have not forgotten that, so thank you.
Yeah.
It made me a lifetime customer. It made me my local. As I think if you're in the Fort Collins area, you should really start looking at Brothers Bar in Fort Collins. We're going to edit all this stuff out.
Yep.
All right. Well, Seth, anything else?
No, that should do it.
All right. We'll see you in a little bit.